This morning I was fortunate enough to get a message from somebody in Indonesia, somebody that lives right on Sulawesi Island. He wanted me to take a look at a retic that he recently acquired from a friend. Now, this retic had been in captivity roughly 2 years, and it was a very unique looking snake, and he wanted me to take a look at it, see what I thought. After seeing it and looking at the island and the size of the island it comes from, it's clearly a new dwarf locality. It comes from a small island just off the north peninsula of Sulawesi called Siau. I believe that's how it's pronounced, Siau. It's Siau. So we'll take a quick look at the island itself to give you an idea of just how small this island is. So here's Sulawesi, and the guy who has it lives right here. And the island that this retic is from is right here. So this is a pretty small island. I looked it up. It's roughly 61 square miles. It has a population, surprisingly, of 45,000 people as of 2020, and it it doesn't seem to have any large prey source from what I can find. And let me find my phone here. I'll read what the guy said. And this is what his friend told him that lives on the island. My friend from Siau said the Siau Island has no boar, no hog species, and no natural local big prey for retics to feed. And mostly they are being semi-arboreal to hunt birds, partridge, and for local weasels. So there's definitely a small prey source on the island that wouldn't be able to support a large retic. So it just logically the only thing that could live on this island retic wise is something at most something in the dwarf range of size. So this is definitely a dwarf island. When you go down and look at these even smaller islands here, these were good potential for super dwarf size retics if they do have retics. So there's a small primate on the island that the scientific community is pretty involved with. I forget how to say it. Tarse or something. I don't know. Some little monkey thing. I'll show you in a second. But so when you look at this island, it's right in between the northern part of Sula and this island here. I've seen retics from it, and they have a very similar, almost identical look to the Sulas, with the exception of the ones I've seen had a slightly broader snout, similar to some of the Saputri south of Sulawesi. So this island right here is Siau is right here. Here's Halmahara, the Ternate, Ternate, the northern Malukus, central Malukus. And once you see the animal, and I'll do some comparisons of some of the northern central Malukus and even some of the superdwarfs, you can see how much different it is from this group of animals here from the Saputri group. And it still has some Saputri traits, as do central and northern Maluku, and even some of the Moluccans, the southern group of islands below central Maluku. So we'll bring up some pictures of this Siau Island retic. So the first pic we need to look at is this top-down pic, because this is a really good indication of this snake's body type, pattern, pattern structure, colors, everything. So as the first thing you can see here is, if somebody was to ask me what this snake was, I would immediately think it was something from the central or northern Malukus based on color, pattern. And when you see this here in this part of the side pattern, this is really typical of central and northern Malukus, and you also see this in some of the Saputri as well, and into the superdwarfs. So that's one thing that all those snakes do have in common, is they do have a similar side pattern structure. But when you look at the head, and when you look at this shape is very, very common in the Halmaharas, some of the central Malukus, and even up into the southern Philippines. With the only exception of the southern Philippines, a lot of times this snout is a little more squared off. But when you look at head scale, this is very common of central Maluku and some of the Saputri, but everything about this snake looks more like central and northern Maluku versus Saputri. So we'll take a look at a couple other pics here. Yeah, here's a good pic from outside, some nice natural sunlight that really gives you an idea of the color and pattern. And you know, as I've said, this clearly looks like something from the Malukus. Here's another pic there, another good back pattern. You see how light the tail is. Here is one of those little primates that live on the island. I'm sure they're eating those. And here's a couple other little pics. They're not as good. You can't see as much of the snake, but it still gives you a general idea of what the snake actually looks like. So we'll take a look at some other pictures from some other islands to show the similarities. And then we'll just jump on my website. That'll be the quickest way to do this. So here is a central Sula, and you can clearly see pattern structure is similar, somewhat on the back pattern, but definitely thicker black. But this, as you can see, the snout here is definitely shorter. Here's a central Maluku, as you can see, very similar pattern, especially down in here in the tail. For back pattern, similar back pattern structure, side pattern structure, and as you can see, the head, very similar head and scale pattern. Here's a good example to show you just how much a little bit of black changes the look of an animal. This is of Ternate Island, and if that other snake from Siau that I showed would have had slightly thicker black, it would look almost identical to this snake, which is kind of hard to believe considering how much different they look. An extra scale of black around the back pattern will cause the black to connect to the black around the white dots on the side, cause the pattern to bleed over a little bit more, cause a lot of this black in this right down the center of the snake, and it's amazing just what a little bit of black will do and how drastically it will change the look of a snake. But at the same time, the two animals have almost identical pattern structure. Here's a Marathi island, very similar side pattern, just the back pattern is just a little bit more rounded. And for a good comparison, we'll just bring the picture back up, as you can see. Here is a southern Philippine to give you an idea on similarities of color. So these animals are definitely taking similar evolutionary paths. Here's a Tidore Island. This is the island just south of Ternate, and this snake definitely has a similar look to this siau island retic. Here's that same snake, a little larger, but similar color, similar pattern. And here's a Madu, as you can see. Let's pull this up again. Very similar. For pattern, that is. Color's definitely different, but as that back pattern connected, as you know, and sitting the way it's sitting on the back, it's these animals are all a lot more similar than you might think, and it's unfortunate we lost importation, and because there's no financial reason for anybody to try to make sure this animal doesn't get hunted to extinction on that island that's only 61 square miles with a population of 45,000 people. And it's very unfortunate that the scientific community, one, doesn't even know these animals exist, and two, and it won't show any interest in them because they're not large enough to draw an attraction to their zoos. So the only people that would really be interested in making sure these localities continue would be people like me and other breeders that would want to get them into captivity for captive reproduction to create sustainable populations. And that's something that was really important that's something that is very important for the continuation of some of these retics, and us losing importation and USARK only focusing on getting back interstate commerce was very unfortunate, because as dwarfs and super dwarfs have gotten more and more hyped up, people have essentially lost the forest through the trees on this one, and the forest is the reticulated python's species and subspecies themselves. Everybody's kind of caught up in the hype of this or that locality and not really looking at the large picture. And the large picture is the reticulated pythons have the largest range of any python on the planet, and there's literally thousands and thousands of island localities that have taken extremely different evolutionary routes as retics from islands very close by. These animals are very interesting specifically for the evolutionary paths that they've taken, and nobody's really studying them, unfortunately. And the only people that were really going to take the time and money to work with these animals were the captive breeders, the private citizens, and we lost that because USARK was so focused on interstate commerce with their lawsuit. And since the snakes are still on the Lacey Act, they could be illegal to transport at any time. All the Fish and Wildlife has to do is get the Lacey Act amended. So we're going to be in a position to lose not only importation but interstate commerce because of the USARK win, which is going to make Fish and Wildlife amend the Lacey Act so they do have some control over the legitimately invasive animals on the Lacey Act. And this snake today is a perfect example of why we need importation. As hyped up as super dwarfs and dwarfs are, and all the nonsense about we shouldn't take them out of the wild, that's just so the breeders that have a stranglehold on a few localities can keep charging these prices, because prices will come down if importation comes back. And I'm actually in that category, but I would rather be able to get this snake imported and charge less for my Ternates than not be able to get this snake imported and get a little bit more money, because I think it's more beneficial to be able to get in these unique dwarf and super dwarf localities that are out there than it is for me to make an extra $500 on a sale. Unfortunately, the greed within the community has caused them not to push USR to do what they should have done with the donation money that they took in. So I hope you liked this video, and I hope you enjoyed seeing this siau locality that does appear by all logical reasons to be a new dwarf locality. I'm going to work on getting more pictures and information on not only this locality but others, and hopefully other reptiles on some of these smaller islands. So I hope you liked this, and I hope you found it informative. And as always, if you think you're getting your $5 worth for this kind of information and these kinds of videos, let people know. I recently got kicked off of US Dwarf and Super Dwarf because I called out Garrett for spreading misinformation about what that females determine overall size. And yeah, if you saw any of that, that was a joke. Of course, he didn't respond. He just, it was just his crew. But we don't need misinformation. We need breeders to be honest, and we need breeders to focus more on the long-term reproductive aspect of this, not on the short-term sell and creating hype and creating bubbles that eventually crash markets and lead to the overproduction of reticulated pythons that have nowhere to go. So, all right, I hope you liked it.